Hello from NASA headquarters, and welcome to today's Artemis Generation virtual event hosted by Congressman Ed Case, NASA Administrator Jim Bridenstine, with NASA astronaut Jonny Kim, and students of Capital A High School. Today's event is being recorded, and attendee microphones are muted for the duration of the event. Now I am honored to introduce today's host, Congressman Ed Case, who proudly represents Hawaii's 1st Congressional District. He sits on the House Appropriations Committee, Commerce, Justice, Science Subcommittee, which provides funding for NASA. And now I am pleased to turn it over to Congressman Case.
Aloha, Kapolei Hurricanes. Principal Shinkawa, Assistant Principal Nakamoto, your great science teacher, Anaida Gamrat, and all of the students on the phone call today. It's so great to be with you. As was pointed out, I'm so deeply honored to represent Kapolei High in the United States House of Representatives. And it's been a wonderful experience for me over the years. I've spent time with you in your school and certainly hosted you in Washington, D.C. And it is a distinct honor for me to be with each and all of you today. And I am so honored as well that today we have a great hour spent with the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, also known as NASA, one of our country's and world's premier institutions, one of the most supported and beloved institutions in our entire federal government. NASA for decades now has led space exploration, space acquisition, and understanding of space for our country and for our world. It has fostered international relationships with folks that you don't always think about as being our friends, such as the Soviet Union. We have been doing space with the Soviet Union for decades. And we have some incredible people from NASA that are with us here today. Administrator Jim Bridenstine and astronaut Dr. Jonny Kim. I feel honored that you're with us, both of you, and I want to just offer you a virtual aloha from all of us here in Hawaii. I just want to say a few things about what we're up to today. NASA, of course, we know of as our space exploration agency, but NASA is much more than that. NASA is one of the leading science institutions in our country and our world. It does incredible scientific research. NASA tracks not only the exploration of space with the moon and beyond, and the administrator will speak to that, but it also watches our Earth. We have some of the leading installations in that regard right here in Hawaii. We have on Haleakala and throughout our state some of the leading scientific instruments in our world that are used by NASA to chart things like coastal erosion and climate change, things that are so critical to all of us here today. NASA has been involved in Hawaii for a long, long time. NASA goes back to the days of the early space exploration in the moon, where we staged some of the leading radar stations that tracked the earliest astronauts around the world over at Koke'e on Kauai. Of course, we also staged the recovery of our astronauts coming back from space right out of Pearl Harbor. And today, and in recent years, we've hosted experimental modules where we've actually tested the ability to base in other planets and on the moon, right here in Hawaii. We in Hawaii sometimes forget how much capability and achievement we've already realized in space generally and NASA specifically. 3 astronauts at least have had Hawaii ties. Of course, Ellison Onizuka, we all know from my home island of Hawaii. Lacey Veach was an astronaut who came out of high school and went into the military and then into the astronaut corps right here. And Megan MacArthur, who was born and raised here in Hawaii, is a current astronaut. She's going to pilot the next NASA SpaceX mission in just a few months. We also, of course, have leading science-related research and achievement going on right here. Just in the last few weeks, we've seen 2 of our own win Nobel Prizes, the top prize in science, among other fields, but in science for sure, right out of Hawaii here. So one thing that we should emphasize right from the get-go is that we do all of this right here in Hawaii, and you have the opportunity to be a part of this starting right now. As was mentioned, I serve in Congress on your behalf, but also serve in a national level on the Appropriations Committee, which is responsible for all federal funding, and on the subcommittee that looks over NASA. So it is our job to make sure that NASA is on track and is adequately funded. And your country funds NASA to the tune of about $23 billion a year. And that's funding that we are very, very comfortable to fund. We believe that the missions of NASA are incredible missions, and the overall goals of NASA are the right goals for our country. So it's an exciting time, and I want to just close by saying to you that when I talk about opportunity to you, the students of Kapolei High, I mean that the opportunity is right there for you. And I'm gonna share a very, very personal story to show you that I know something of what I speak, and I'm going to embarrass my daughter by doing this because she doesn't really like me to talk too much about what she's up to. But I think this is an appropriate way to do it. She was born and raised here in Hawaii. She went through high school in Hawaii. She went away. She was interested in science and technology and math. Early on, she had a great one teacher turned her path. Really a great teacher in math that made her understand things that maybe she didn't understand earlier. She set her sights on STEM-related careers. She went away. She got a degree in astrophysics, a PhD in astronomy right here from the University of Hawaii. She's been on the telescopes on Mauna Kea. She conducts incredible research throughout our country and our world, and she is now an employee of NASA. Sorry, Administrator. She is actually one of your employees, although I'm sure she wouldn't want me to tell you that. But nonetheless, I let the cat out of the bag there. So I'm just really, really happy that we have this opportunity. For me, this is about you all knowing what your country is doing, especially at NASA. You've got such great guests it's amazing that they're joining us here today. But if I can give you one thing to take away, to think about science, technology, and math related engineering careers, and think and dream big, dream that you can also grow up to achieve great things in this area, to contribute back to your country, and I hope back to your Hawaii as well. So with that, it's really my pleasure to introduce Administrator Jim Bridenstine. Administrator Bridenstine is a native of Oklahoma. He grew up in Oklahoma and went into the Navy, where he was a aircraft carrier pilot. So he flew off of aircraft carriers all over the world, including being based right here in Hawaii. So he knows something about Hawaii. He went on to get advanced degrees, including an MBA from Rice University. And in 2012, he was elected to the U.S. House of Representatives from Oklahoma and served very well for 3 terms, including on the Science, Space, and Technology Committee in the U.S. House of Representatives. And he was appointed as the administrator of NASA in 2018 and has done a great job. So with that, Administrator, I thank you again, and Dr. Kim, for being with us, and I turn it over to you.
Well, thank you so much, Representative Case. It's an honor to be with you. And as you mentioned, NASA could not do what we do without your leadership and support. You said, the $23 billion budget, that's a very strong budget that NASA has. And of course, your support on the Appropriations Committee has been monumental in getting us to this point. So I'll go through a few things that I think people might be interested in that NASA is up to right now. And then I'll turn it over to Dr. Jonny Kim, who is the person I want to be like when I grow up, even though he's 10 years younger than me. He's way cooler than me. He's an astronaut and a Navy SEAL and a medical doctor. I mean, he's pretty much got, he puts all of us to shame, quite frankly. But what an amazing guy. But I'll tell you this. What are we doing right now in low Earth orbit? A lot of people are familiar with the International Space Station, which is in orbit around the Earth. We're launching commercial vehicles to resupply the International Space Station. Within the last 6 months, we started launching commercial vehicles to send crew to the International Space Station, which was an amazing achievement. And it took about 10 years to get there, but we got there. Shows strong commitment over a long period of time with bipartisan support, which is another reason I love NASA. Everybody likes NASA. It doesn't get bogged down in politics, and we have continuity of purpose. That's the big goal that we need to achieve, because what we do is usually decadal in nature or even generational in nature. We're talking about things that are projects that take 10 or more years. And so now we're resupplying and we're sending crew to the International Space Station commercially. And eventually we want to have commercial space stations themselves. So what are we doing right now on the International Space Station to develop the markets that are of the future? And I know there's on the phone, I read that there's a natural resources group with us. One of the natural resources that we have in space that you can't really get anywhere else is something that we call microgravity or zero gravity. The value of not having gravity for science and discovery is really astonishing. For example, we can create pharmaceuticals in space by compounding pharmaceuticals in the microgravity environment in a way that you can't do within the gravity well of Earth. We can create immunizations for diseases like salmonella or even pneumonia. That we've advanced these kind of immunizations on the International Space Station that we can only do in the microgravity of space. Right now, we're working to prove that we can use your own skin cells to create your own human tissue in the microgravity of space. If you were to try to, in other words, think of 3D printing human tissue, think of 3D printing your own human organs, if you will. So the goal here is in the microgravity of space, that tissue can grow in 3 dimensions. But if you were to do that in the gravity well of Earth, it would just go flat. So that has tremendous value when it comes to science and medicine. We think about advanced materials. The retina for the human eyeball is exceptionally thin. And so what we're doing on the International Space Station right now is we are proving that we can create artificial retinas that are 1 or 2 atoms thick, so that ultimately, and we can only do that in the microgravity of space, but ultimately the goal is to make sure that people who have macular degeneration and go blind, they don't have to lose their eyesight. So this value, we're really just now at the very beginning of understanding the value of microgravity, and there's so much work left to do. But what we're doing is we're looking at things that have what we believe are going to be transformational impacts for life on Earth to benefit all of humanity. And then we can take that capability and commercialize it. So in the future, we'll have commercial space stations that are capitalized by private individuals and investors, and they can go forward and they can start developing and commercializing all these capabilities. And then what can NASA do? NASA can use the resources that come to us from the American taxpayer to do the next thing. How do we mature the next capability or the next technology? And how do we do things that might not have a marketplace just yet, like go to the moon? We want to go to the moon sustainably. We call it the Artemis Program. We're going to go to the moon with commercial partners, with international partners. And I love what Congressman Case, he talked about how it brings people together. We right now, we have American astronauts and Russian cosmonauts on the International Space Station, and they've been there together now for 20 years, if you can imagine that. 20 years living and working together in space. Now, it's not the same crews, make no mistake. We keep trading crews out, otherwise it'd be pretty rough life up there for 20 years. But it's an amazing tool of diplomacy. And we've had astronauts from 15 different, we've had astronauts from 19 different nations on the International Space Station. We've got 15 different countries that operate the International Space Station. And so this tool of diplomacy is really, really amazing. And so when we go to the moon, we want to take what we've learned about how valuable space is to bringing people together. It brings Republicans and Democrats together. It brings Russians and Americans together. And all of a sudden, people start, believing that we can all achieve more when we work together, which is one of the reasons I just absolutely love working at NASA. So we're going to the moon with commercial partners and international partners. We're going to go sustainably. In other words, this time when we go to the moon, we're going to stay. We're going to use the resources of the moon to live and work for long periods of time. Imagine a base camp on the moon. So people say, well, what does that mean? Well, we discovered about 10 years ago, we discovered that there's hundreds of millions of tons of water ice on the south pole of the moon. What does that mean? Water ice is H2O. It's hydrogen and oxygen. The oxygen, of course, is tremendously valuable for breathing. The H2O is valuable for drinking, and the hydrogen itself is, in fact, fuel. It's power. It's the same rocket fuel, in fact, that powered the space shuttles, and the same rocket fuel that will power the SLS rocket, which is the rocket that we're producing right now to take astronauts back to the moon. So we're going to the moon sustainably, and we're going with a purpose, and that purpose is to get to Mars. And people say, well, why? Why do you need to go to Mars? The reason Mars is important, there's a lot of reasons, but I'll just give three real quick. We've made amazing scientific discoveries in the last couple of years on Mars. Mars is covered in complex organic compounds. The building blocks for life exist on Mars. They don't exist on the moon at all. Of course, they're all over the Earth, and they're all over Mars. What does that mean? The probability of finding life on another world just went up. It doesn't guarantee there's life there by any stretch of the imagination. But then we add to that the fact that we believe we have found liquid water 12 kilometers under the surface of Mars. What do we know about liquid water on Earth? Wherever there's liquid water on Earth, there's life. Is that true on Mars? We don't know, but we need to go find out. And then we think about that we recently discovered that there are cycles of methane on Mars that match the seasons of Mars. In other words, again, it might be geological in nature, but it also very well could be biological in nature. The probability of finding life on another world keeps going up. And right now, as we speak, we have an astrobiology robot on its way, we call it Perseverance, on its way to Mars for the first time in history to do astrobiology. It will be looking for either current or ancient signs of life on Mars, so this is a very, very exciting time. There's so much more to discover. The challenge with Mars is that it's number one, it's about a 9-month journey there. And by the time you get there, Earth and Mars are on the opposite sides of the sun, or at least we're not aligned anymore on the same side of the sun. So the value of the moon is that the moon and the Earth are always together. Wherever we are around the sun, we're always together. Mars is in its own orbit. So we have one opportunity every 26 months to get to Mars. And when you get there, you've got to be willing to stay for a period of 2 years. So we need to use the moon to learn how to live and work for a long period of time on another world. We take all of that knowledge and all of that learning, and we take that to Mars for a long duration mission. And we do it under the program that we're developing right now is called the Artemis Program. Now, Artemis is our return to the moon sustainably, but it is the necessary first step for an eventual Mars mission. And when we talk about Artemis, a lot of us are so proud of the Apollo program, and we love Apollo. It's an amazing program. But there's two problems with the Apollo program. Number one, it ended. We want to make sure this time we go to the moon, we actually stay. Number two, in those days, all of our astronauts came from fighter pilot backgrounds and test pilot backgrounds, and there were no opportunities for women in those days. But now at NASA, we have this very diverse, highly qualified astronaut corps that includes women. And we named the program Artemis because in Greek mythology, Artemis is the twin sister of Apollo, and she was in fact the goddess of the moon. So now we have the opportunity to go back to the moon sustainably with all of America under a program named after the twin sister of Apollo. And I'll tell you, one person I'm very excited about seeing them go to space and even walk on the moon is the person I'm going to introduce now. And of course, that's Jonny Kim. Jonny Kim comes from California, Southern California, he became a Navy SEAL out of high school. And of course, he was a combat medic and, did amazing things as a Navy SEAL, which by the way is extremely difficult and challenging to do. So he went from being a Navy SEAL, then he got his degree in mathematics from the University of California at San Diego. And then from there, he went on to go to medical school at Harvard, and became a medical doctor. And then because he was so bored with all of this stuff, he decided to apply for and become a NASA astronaut. So like I said at the beginning, I've always told people when I grow up, I want to be like Jonny Kim. And it's great to have him with us. And I can't wait to see what he does when we go back to the moon. Jonny Kim, over to you. Dr. Jonny Kim.
Thank you for the kind introduction, Administrator Bridenstine, and for the warm welcome. Aloha to you, Congressman Case, and to the students of Kapolei High School. Big honor for me to be here, and I hope to just briefly share some of my journey that's led me here in this amazing opportunity to serve as a NASA astronaut. And I hope to impart to you, to really the students at Kapolei High School, our next generation of scientists, explorers, and leaders, what Congressman Case said, and how it all starts, not just with a curiosity for the STEM degrees, but with a dream. And that's where it started for me. Let me know if I'm going to share my screen here briefly. And just let me know if it's not showing up here.
It's looking good.
All right, thank you. So as Mr. Bridenstine said, I grew up in California. I'm actually a first-generation Korean American. My parents were South Korean immigrants, and like a lot of immigrant families, they moved to the United States for that American dream, for that promise of a better future for their children. I came from a really humble background, and if I had to describe my adolescence, I'm going to use a word that may seem surprising given where I'm sitting today. And it's that I felt lost. For most of my adolescence, I felt lost. I didn't have dreams. I certainly didn't dream about being an astronaut. And for just a lot of reasons, I didn't have that confidence that is so healthy to pursue these important dreams in life, to want to be someone. I lacked inspiration. And it wasn't until I was 16 years old that I felt my first calling, and that was to become a Navy SEAL. And I couldn't really articulate to you exactly all the elements that drew me to that. But when I first heard about the organization, the virtues, the silent professionalism, the loyalty, the integrity, the courage, all of these elements just called out for me to join this elite group. And that's what I did. At the young age of 18, after graduating high school, I enlisted in the Navy. But this was also a pretty rough time for our country. Around that time, the Twin Towers fell in 2011. And I'd be remiss to not mention that that was also a significant life event that galvanized me to want to serve, calling greater than myself. And this is where I also learned the essence, the virtues of teamwork, and the bond teammates can share when they go through shared suffering or when they accomplish something that's very, very tough together. I learned so many things about leadership, about followership, but some of the things, just to summarize, that I learned through my experiences in the military were unanimous respect up and down the chain. And it doesn't matter who you are or where you came from, everyone is deserving of respect. I also learned that we have to take accountability for our actions, and we have to recognize that our intent and our actions are two separate things. I'm going to say that again. Recognizing that our intent and our actions are two separate things. It may sound very obvious, but a lot of the reasons that we have so much conflict in society is not because not realizing the difference between those two things, and realizing that we have to take accountability for our actions, and realizing that sometimes our actions may not be consistent with our intent has helped me grow as a person and as a teammate in all the different organizations that I've been able to be a part of. Through the military, I learned about self-control and discipline, and I also learned about humility. This is also a very tough environment to learn teamwork. And this was the first time where I had the opportunity to trust and lean on my teammates to accomplish a mission. And sometimes the consequences of the task we had at hand were pretty grave. And we knew that our lives depended on each other and that we had to do the best for ourselves and for each other in order to accomplish the mission and come home safely. And in a lot of ways, that's what we currently do in space. I'm going to talk a little bit about it later, but space is a very difficult business, and but it's a worthy venture, and it's something that we need to be prepared for and need to be meticulous from the start. And every single person that's involved in space exploration is important. Everywhere, starting from the engineers and the trainers to the astronauts flying the missions. After my time in the military, I had a series of experiences that led me down this path of service. And I kind of spoke about my initial motivations to join the military, and a lot of it was a little bit selfish about finding my own identity and wanting to learn to protect others and myself. But during my service, I learned the value of being a part of a calling greater than yourself. And I worked with amazing men and women that inspired me to want to spend the rest of my time living to make this world a better place. And it was around that time where I realized that medicine was a field that I could dedicate myself to leave a better mark in this world. So with the grace of the Navy, I applied for a commission and went back to school. I was in my upper 20s when I started undergraduate, and I studied math because of that calling for the sciences. And that led me to a career in medicine. This was also a time in my life where I was expanding my family, and I had my first son in undergraduate, and continued to grow that family throughout medical school. I had an opportunity to practice medicine in Boston at Massachusetts General Hospital and Brigham and Women's Hospital. And this is where I felt that the culmination of a lot of the teamwork skills that I had learned through the military and through civilian life as well, learning my soft and hard skills, learning to talk to people, learning to be a dynamic team player, came to fruition as an effective physician in a very busy emergency room in Boston. I can go in and talk about the steps that led me to my current path as an astronaut, but I would be remiss if I didn't briefly mention some of the heroes that I've been fortunate to work with throughout my life that have inspired me. And what you see before you is just some faces, and these were all important warriors to me that had an impact on my life and believed in what they were fighting for, and unfortunately weren't able to come home. And it was serving and living alongside them that really inspired me to want to dedicate my life to service. In medical school, I had this idea. I met another astronaut, Scott Paradzinski, that kind of opened my eyes to this amazing platform that astronauts have to be able to explore the cosmos, to push beyond the human limits and inspire the next generation. And it's that last part, inspiring the next generation, that really caught me. Because as I described earlier, I didn't have much of vision growing up. I didn't have the confidence. I didn't have those dreams that are so healthy for us to have in our lives. And I felt this calling to be an astronaut, to do those things, to explore space, but to be able to have an opportunity to inspire that next generation. And that's why I'm really honored to be able to talk with you today. NASA has also been a place where I felt the culmination of so many skills I've learned in my previous occupations as a Navy SEAL and as a physician have come to fruition to make me an effective team player. We've had many opportunities during our NASA training to come together and lean on each other. The pictures you see before us are some of us doing our geology training, our land survival training, and learning how to be effective crewmates out in the wilderness, which is an extreme environment that is akin to what we experience when we go to low Earth orbit, or as we look to the future for Artemis, as we bring the first woman and the next man back to the lunar surface. And with that, I conclude my presentation, and happy to transition to phase of questioning.
All right. So I think Congressman Case, I think you're going to direct the first one.
Right. Thank you so much to you both. So we've got a series of questions, and we had a lot to say to each and all of you. So apologies for going over a little bit. So we'll try to keep our answers short so we can get through all of the questions. Our first question is from 12th grader Chase Garcia. He's a Business Academy student, and I think his question is to Dr. Kim.
Hi, I'm Chase. This is for Astronaut Kim. My question is, what other memories in your life was most inspirational when you wanted to become an astronaut?
Hi, Chase. Thanks for the question. I kind of touched on it during my presentation, but there's so many memories that have been impactful to me that have led me on this general path of service. As I mentioned, I was very lucky to share my life with very brave men and women in service to each other and to a common cause in the military. And unfortunately, some of those men and women who were very dear to me never made it home. And I made a promise long ago that for the rest of my life, I would pledge my life to service, to make this world a better place, because I know that they all certainly would have done the same thing. And NASA does that very, very well. And we do it every single day. NASA, with our international partners, is comprised of the greatest minds our world can offer. And we work to make a singular goal of space exploration and reaping all the economic, scientific, technological, and societal benefits that come with such an endeavor, to bring that back to Earth. So to answer your question, it was a series of experiences, all with a common thread of service, that have led me to becoming an astronaut.
All right. Our next question is from 12th grader Diana Teresa Reese, a Public Human Services Academy student. Diana, are you there?
Yes. Hi, my question for Astronaut Kim is, what does being in the microgravity environment feel like, especially for the first time?
Hi, Diana. Great question. Before I answer, I just want to caveat that my time in microgravity has been very brief and artificial. And what I mean by that is I haven't been to space yet, but I have felt what it feels like to be in a microgravity environment, which was created in a zero-G airplane flying parabolas. And I'd have to say, even though my time in microgravity was for a very short bit, it was absolutely amazing. The closest thing I can think of is that it's probably an experience that's akin to a human taking their first steps in life. There isn't really any human experience that prepares you for that feeling of weightlessness. Your entire life, your brain has been hardwired to Newton's laws. So to be in an environment that has completely nulled out gravity is kind of the ultimate visceral nerd experience. It's just amazing.
Hey, Jonny, let me ask you, did you get sick?
I got sick around like the 15th or 16th parabola, yes.
Okay. So when you say parabola, just so people know, like what you're doing is you're taking an airplane and you're flying it on an upward trajectory, and then you're basically tilting it down. And when you're going over the top, it creates a feeling of weightlessness. Is that the idea?
Yes, Absolutely. That's exactly it. You get a brief feeling of weightlessness as you're coming over the top of the parabola. And depending on the altitude you're doing it at, it may only be, it's a quite brief 20 to 30 seconds. And then the airplane has to pull some hard Gs. So you're experiencing more than 1 G on the way back up, and then able to kind of do it over and over again. But from a vestibular sense, so our ears, I'm going to get a little medical on us. Our ears have these organs that tell us which way is up, down, left, right. And so when we put ourselves in a microgravity and a gravity environment back and forth, it completely confuses those organs. And so you can get quite sick if you're not used to it, which I did.
Our next question is from 10th grader Kainui Walker, who is a Ho'ola Leadership Academy student. Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
What type of research will you be conducting to annotate human landing and future sustainable lunar exploration? And how do you define sustainable in this instance?
That's an astute question. At this point, I don't know the exact research I'll be conducting, but I can tell you a little bit about the types of research we at NASA conduct for improving life here on Earth, as well as contributing to the success of future missions like the Artemis Moon to Mars mission. So the one that comes to mind, we have a mission called LCROSS, and at NASA we have everything for acronyms, and that stands for Lunar Crater Observation and Sensing Satellite. And it was the secondary payload to the LRO mission. And what this device did is it delivered a 2,000 kilogram impactor that created a plume of lunar ejecta that was being observed by multiple Earth and space-based assets. And from the research of this mission, we learned that a certain crater near the south pole of the moon contains ice and other volatiles within the permanently shadowed region. And we're learning about the nature of the lunar regolith at this location as well. This kind of research is just one example of a lot of the things that we do at NASA that's going to help us return to the moon in 2024. And to answer the latter part of your question, in the most simplest sense, we define sustainability as the ability to utilize in situ resources. So that means resources that already exist in the environment you're in to support life, ongoing and future missions. And at the most basic level, humans need the basic elements like water, H2O, which we can harvest from ice on the moon, like Administrator Brydenson was talking about. We need oxygen, which also can be harvested from splitting water, and we need fuel, which we can also, once again, harvest from water as hydrogen. And of course, the sun is the origin of all energy in our solar system, and we can harness that energy through the use of solar technology.
And I'll just add, Jonny, as far as specifically landing on the moon, one of the things that we have to get really good at, if we're going to go to the South Pole where that water ice is embedded in the craters, which are really, really hard to get to and could pose a threat, because it's if we tried to do this during the Apollo era to get to the South Pole where those craters are and there's the water ice, if we tried to do that in the Apollo era, we probably wouldn't have done it. In fact, we wouldn't have done it because there was no way to control the spacecraft that precisely to pinpoint your landing. So we're using what's called an inertial navigation system, where your spacecraft knows where it is in space based on every little acceleration. It measures that acceleration, and then it converts that acceleration into a position. And so we can figure out where your spacecraft is: latitude, longitude, altitude, yaw. Like the attitude is like your yaw, pitch, and roll. Like, how are you positioned in space? And then your velocity and all those kind of things we can get from an inertial navigation system. And then when we go to try to land on the moon, we already have the moon mapped. We put it into a database, and then we have cameras on the spacecraft that are matching what the spacecraft sees, matching it to the images that we've mapped for the moon, and then autonomously the machine is making decisions as to how to very precisely land. And so even right now, just a few days ago, we tested one of those technologies on a Blue Origin launch, which ended up being a very successful technology demonstration. So when we go to the moon this time, we have so many advancements that didn't exist in the 1960s that are just really, really astonishing. And we're gonna be able to get to those very difficult spots where, you know, Jonny mentioned volatiles. Like, what are the volatiles? Well, that's the water ice. And the challenge is the water ice is in the craters because there's no sunshine in those craters. Where there's no sunshine, that's where the ice it doesn't disappear. It doesn't get taken away by what we call the solar winds. So so we got to get to those hard spots, and that's going to be a difference this time. Oh, am I next? I got to ask a question here.
Sorry.
Let's see.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, let's see. Our next question is from 11th grader Brian Bermudez, an Engineering and Design Academy student. Brian, are you here?
Yes. Hello.
Hey, Brian.
My question is, what typically happens up in space that is significant enough for an astronaut to take a spacewalk?
Hey, Brian, great question. So let me start off in saying there's really two types of spacewalks. There's the nominal, or kind of the regularly planned spacewalks, where the focus of the mission can be anything from planned upgrades to fixing non-emergency items that are broken. And with the collaboration of our international partners, we're able to do a lot of things on the outside, the external side of station, with the Canada robotic arm and the JAXA, which is the Japanese Space Agency's robotic arm. So we only subject our astronauts to the risks of a spacewalk when robotics simply cannot do the mission for various reasons. And that might be because there isn't a tool or the capability of the robot just doesn't have that capability to do it. Either it's not able to reach, or for safety reasons, we need a human, a highly trained human, to be able to inspect and make the on-scene call of what the right action is. So this was illustrated pretty recently, actually, on the AMS, which is the Alpha Magnetic Spectrometer. It was this device on the outside of space station that unfortunately broke, and it was used to detect antimatter and dark matter. It had to be fixed with specialized tools that were invented by high school students just for this mission. And it was fixed by onboard astronauts at the time, Drew Morgan and Luca Parmitano. I have myself had been in the NASA Neutral Buoyancy Lab in a spacesuit practicing the installation of IROSA, which is the name of a planned upgrade for the space station solar arrays in the future. And I and other astronauts will practice that because we like to give feedback on this future mission of what may be some good things to do and not so good things to do. So those are all planned spacewalks. The other type of spacewalk that I talked about earlier were like the unplanned ones. And an unplanned one occurs because something external to station happened. It either broke or something that wasn't planned, and if left unfixed, can pose a risk to crew or the mission. An example of this was in 2013, when the space station was leaking coolant into space, and astronauts Chris Cassidy and Tom Marshburn had to perform an unplanned EVA in order to fix it. And so those are some of just many examples of reasons why humans might need to go out and do a spacewalk. But with good training and the collaboration of our international partners, we're really able to manage and address any kind of issue that can happen on station.
Our next question is from senior Madeline McCurdy, a JROTC student. Madeline, are you there?
Yes, sir. My question is, considering the success of the last joint venture between SpaceX and NASA, where do you see the future of public-private partnership taking space exploration?
Hey, man.
Ooh, that's a good question. Go ahead, Johnny, you start.
That is a great question. So space is hard. I think we all know that. To be successful in the business of space exploration, we need the brightest minds from diverse backgrounds, from places all over the world to work together in order to successfully push beyond human limits, explore new worlds, all in an effort to make our Earth a better place for humanity. So the International Space Station, which, as Minister Bryson mentioned, is going to have its 20th anniversary of human presence in low Earth orbit at the end of this month. And that's only possible because of international cooperation. And Madeline, I just want you to think about that. There have been humans living in space continuously longer than you've been alive. Just this month, we had the first signing of the Artemis Accords, which is an international agreement among 8 nations that lay the guiding principles of peaceful exploration, transparency, sharing of scientific discoveries, and rendering emergency aid to each other, among many others. If we're going to be successful, we need the collaboration of bright minds everywhere, and that includes partnerships with commercial organizations. I'm going to go on a quick sidebar because this just happened to me and it's very relevant. So I was involved in a crowdsourcing competition through NASA to develop the next toilet for the human landing system, which is a very interesting topic for many reasons, but all phases of space exploration are important, and that includes the lunar toilet. And we opened this contest to everyone around the world. We just gave them a set of requirements to follow, and we asked them to submit their best designs for the toilet. And I have to say, I was amazed at the ingenuity of the submissions that I and others had to judge. And the entire experience, and so yesterday was the announcement of the winners, and I got to partake in that. And the entire experience just reaffirmed to me that humanity is at its best when we combine our diverse strengths from various backgrounds, whether it's international or commercial, and work together as a team. So I see a very bright future where public and private partnerships take our next generation of explorers who may be present in this very meeting to the moon, Mars, and beyond.
Johnny, that's awesome. Bringing it home with the lunar toilet. I love it. We can all relate to that. You don't want to be on the moon without a toilet, I'll tell you that. Let's see. I think another area here that matters as far as the public-private partnership, if we're always reliant on Congressman Case for our resources, then we're always going to have a very steady base of resources, but at the same time, it's not going to necessarily get bigger. It's not going to grow. But when we enter into public-private partnerships, for example, we just recently launched some astronauts to the International Space Station on a SpaceX rocket in a Falcon rocket in what's called a Crew Dragon capsule. And the point here is that the Falcon rocket is being launched all the time for commercial launches. We think about, things like DirecTV, Dish Network, XM Radio. They're launching all kinds of things into space all the time. And so here, because it's a public-private partnership, NASA is just one customer of many customers. Now, we have to be really careful because there's a big difference between launching a satellite for DirecTV, which you can accept a lot of risk on that, and putting Jonny Kim at the top of a rocket. We're not going to accept risk on Jonny Kim. So we have to make sure that the design is sound, that the engineering is sound, that the testing has been thorough, but the value to NASA is, at the end of the day, we become one customer of many, and the cost for us getting to space goes down. That's been a tremendously valuable thing for the American taxpayer. So we love the appropriations that we get from Congress. We love even more that the people that take us to space have customers that are not us, so that our costs come down, and then we can get more access to space than we could otherwise get. It's also important that even though we want to be one of many customers, We also want to have numerous providers that are competing against each other on cost and innovation and safety. And so as long as we can create those dynamics, the public-private partnerships where we partner side by side with a private company to develop the capability that we need, even though we say that capability is not going to be exclusive to us, I think it pays big dividends. And we're starting to see that right now as we once again launch American astronauts from American soil. All right, let's go to the next question here. This is from, let's see, 11th grader, Hallie Mayan Yumayam. Hope I got that right. Health Academy student. Hallie, are you there?
Hi. Good afternoon and good morning to you gentlemen. As an aspiring naval officer and a physician in the future, how did you balance being a naval officer while being in the medical school and being a physician?
Hi, Nelly. It's great to talk to a future naval officer. As I think you heard, but Minister Bridenstine and I are both Navy. It's hard. I think it's hard. I think it's you got to go back to your roots of maintaining a healthy balance of work and life. And for me, when you have such a big goal, like you're trying to get through medical school, or you're having a growing family, or you're also balancing the duties as a naval officer, it helps to keep in focus what your goal is, especially when it's a longitudinal goal like that, and break up that goal into smaller chunks. And maybe for you, you're in high school right now, so it's to get into a good undergraduate school, and maybe that chunk is, okay, well, I'm going to do really well on this test coming up, or on the SAT coming up, or you've got the MCAT in front of you, and you're kind of breaking that up into chunks. That can be applied to really all of life. That's just not for academics. That's for long-term goals. So I think that was kind of how I did a lot of that personally. But I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that I had an amazing support structure of my family members, of my partner, my wife, and my kids, who supported me along this path. But I'm going to be honest and transparent with you that there are tough roads when you have such a goal like that. But it's so important to keep into focus why you're doing what you're doing and that goal at the end, so you don't lose track. And best of luck to you and your journey.
Our next question is from 11th grader Nalea Takadena, an engineering and design student. Nalea?
Hi, my question is, after high school, you went on to receive a bachelor's in mathematics, a doctorate degree in medicine, and you worked a medical internship at a residency and 2 hospitals. Being that you have all this medical experience, how difficult or easy was it for you to transition into the field of aeronautics and space?
That's a great question. And I think what was cultivated in me at a young age was that the most important ingredient into learning something new or excelling at something new is just your motivation and your attitude. And I learned in the military of approaching things with a lot of humility, never expecting yourself to be the master of anything, always taking critical feedback very well, working really hard. And so those elements are universal. They don't just work for the military, or they don't just work for medicine or engineering. They work in everything. And so what has been helpful for me is kind of maintaining that approach, that attitude every time I to a new field. And it's been helpful. I firmly believe that if you are motivated about any particular field, you will find a way to learn about it. If you're teaching yourself or you're seeking internet resources, you will find a way. So sticking with those guiding principles has helped. At the heart of everything, it's about just being a good human being, being inquisitive, being curious, and working hard.
All right. And the last question here, it looks like 10th graders. We got two 10th graders, Riley and Ryan Callumlim, twin brothers at the Avid Academy. Are you guys there?
Hello. My question is to Mr. Bridenstine. Since the Space Shuttle Division of NASA ended in 2011, and NASA no longer uses its own space shuttles to travel to places such as the International Space Station and the Moon, but instead relies on companies such as SpaceX and other Russian companies to transport astronauts to space. What are the advantages and disadvantages of this change that have impacted astronauts for the space program?
Yeah, that's important. And it's not just an impact on the astronauts, it's an impact for the nation. So for a period of time, we were entirely dependent on Russia to get back and forth to the International Space Station. And so they in essence had a monopoly. And so like any like any entrepreneur would do, they started raising the prices on us. And so I think it's important. We want the partnership. It's a very important partnership, and it goes back to 1975 after the Apollo program. We had the Apollo-Soyuz program, which was the first space station that we put to get in orbit together. And then we had the Space Shuttle Mir program. Russia built a space station called Mir. We used the space shuttle as a transportation system. And so we love the part. And now that we've got the International Space Station, which has been, flying astronauts and cosmonauts for 20 years. So we love the partnership. We think it's important, but we also think it's important to have our own capability. And so we are right now getting to the point where we do have our own capability, which will be beneficial to the taxpayer in the long run. But we still believe that this is a great tool of diplomacy, and we want to work together so that all of us can achieve more when we work together. So with that, I think that's the last question, and I'll turn it over to Representative Case for, I guess, your closing comments.
Well, thank you so much. That sure went fast. I could easily sit here, and I learned so much just just listening to each and all of you, to the questions and to the answers. And I'm so appreciative to Administrator Bridenstine. I don't know, maybe you got something in your future. Administrator Bridenstine and astronaut Dr. Jonny Kim for joining us, and NASA staff who set this up, to all of your school administrators at Kapolei High, and especially to you students. It was fantastic to have you join us today, and to again listen to what's on your mind. Obviously, you have a lot in your mind. I want to leave you with just a couple of thoughts, things that I heard in this presentation, and I think Dr. Kim said something late on that was on my mind. Excuse me, the entire time, and he said, I think his words were, "I firmly believe that if you find what you want to do, you will work hard to achieve it." I firmly believe that if you find what you want to do, you will work hard to achieve it. That's such an incredibly important lesson in life. And you heard Dr. Kim say that when he was your age, he didn't quite have that dream yet. I know I didn't have that dream until I was 22, 23 years old. So I was a little late as compared to him. Sometimes you take a look at a person like Jonny Kim, and there's so much achievement in his life, so much drive, so much goal-oriented, so much, hardship, really, to get to where he is today. And you think, well, how can I ever do that? But think that when he was your age, he was you. And so you can aspire to be him, or for that matter, to be the best in any field that you choose. So find your dream and pursue your dream. And I am firmly convinced that you will reach your goals. I hope that when you consider your dreams, you will consider science, technology, engineering, and math. Our country needs STEM. Our country needs you in all kinds of fields, not just NASA. If you want to chase NASA as your dream, please do it. NASA has had an incredible past, and it has an incredible future. The things that NASA is working on today are things that your generation will inherit and carry it forward into the next generation. I hope you're part of that if you want to be. But if you're not, please think about other areas. The Mauna Kea Scholars right there at Kapolei is a perfect example of that, where you are one of the first and only schools still to participate in a program that tries to introduce you to the incredible astronomy that we do right here in Hawaii. And so as I leave you today, STEM, find your dream, pursue your dream, support NASA. NASA is an incredible institution, again, that is fulfilling our desire to explore space together in a cooperative way with the rest of the world. We need things that unite our world, but not just space. It's about our world too, to take care of our own Aina, as we say here and know here in Hawaii. So thank you again very much for all of you for participating today.
And Representative Case, I just want to say thank you to you for your leadership. I know as a member of Congress, you have a lot on your plate, a lot on your agenda, and yet you're committed to NASA and our mission. And of course, you're on a key position as an appropriator, and we just want to thank you for all of the support. And we hope that by doing these missions and talking about them, we really hope that we've made you proud with what you've helped us be able to achieve. So thank you for your leadership.
All right, I think that's it. We're signing off, right?
I think so.
That concludes today's event. Aloha.
Okay.
All right.
Aloha.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.